Today, let's talk about how I recreated this Ralph Lauren striped dress using the Simplicity S9707. Let's talk about it. Hi friends, in today's video, we're talking about how I recreated this striped dress by Ralph Lauren using the Simplicity S9707 and fabric from Joann Fabrics. So I will give you a little bit of an overview of how I actually chose my inspiration, but I want to encourage you to watch the video that I posted before this video that talks about how I select inspiration photos and also fabric for my different styles. And I also give you tips and tricks on how you can actually do that yourself so that you can research and create your own styles based on inspirations that you have or fabric that you have. So let's talk about the pattern first. And we are talking about the Simplicity S9707, but you can also purchase the Simplicity S9708, which is a plus size pattern. So I have the Simplicity S9707 in the groups of 12 to 20. So the size 12 to 20, but you can also get, I believe, 6 to 12. And then you can get 20W to 28W, and I believe 30W to 38W, if I'm not mistaken. So I selected the size 16 initially, and then I found out that that was too big. I think that was like 45.5 inches for the bust. I had to grade down to the size 14. And I will say that this has a lot of ease in the pattern. So this pattern features 4 different variations, including length variations as well as sleeve variations. You also have an option to put the pocket on your breast or omit the pocket. So you have a pocket, breast pocket that you can actually put on your garment as well. So although this pattern does not come in like a dress length, it's very easy to shorten and lengthen this pattern. And that's what I did in order to achieve the look that you see throughout this video. So as I mentioned before, I selected the size 16 initially, but I went down to the size 14, and that 14 is about 43 inches for the bust. It's a little bit more of a closer fit than that size 16. If you want a looser garment, then I would say you can definitely go into the project just sewing it based on the tissue garment measurements. However, if you want something more of like a closer fit or, you know, semi-close, I would say you would need to go down the size because this pattern does have quite a bit of ease in the pattern. In terms of pattern pieces, you get your front, which is cut twice. You do not have a button placket. You're going to be creating like a self-facing for the front, so you don't have a button placket. You have a collar, no collar stand. You have 2 different variations of a cuff, so you could do a regular cuff or you can do a wide cuff. And then you also have a back yoke. And I don't know if I mentioned that you do have a collar, but you don't have a collar stand. You don't have any facings. Your upper collar is going to be kind of like your facing for the back of the neckline. And then for the front of the neckline, they have you turn the front piece in front of your garment. They have you turn that under and kind of like close off the top of your garment. So that way you don't see a raw edge showing. For the hem of the garment, I personally did a 7/8 of an inch hem, but I believe that the pattern calls for a 5/8 of an inch hem. You do have a drop shoulder for your garment, and so you don't really have to worry too much about setting in sleeves. They do have you ease in the top of your sleeve just a little bit, but honestly, since it's a drop shoulder, you don't really have to worry too much about a set-in sleeve there. I didn't have to do anything in the way of a bicep adjustment, which was really nice because you all know I talk about this quite a bit on my channel. I do have a little bit of a larger bicep. And so I thought maybe for that size 14, 43 inches for the bust, that I would need to do a bicep adjustment for my sleeve, but I did not have to do that. Overall, this was a very simple, easy pattern to sew, and it was a great pattern to sew. I only ran into one problem, and that was the problem with my sleeve. So at the lower edge of the sleeve, you do have 2 pleats that you're supposed to put on your sleeve. For whatever reason, after I put those 2 pleats on, it did not fit the cuff of the pattern's cuff. And so I had to put an additional pleat on my sleeve. So instead of having 2 pleats, I have 3 pleats on my sleeve, which was something that one of you on the channel recommended, because I talked about it in my what I'm sewing video, or what I have been sewing video. I talked a little bit about the problem that I was having with that. And some of you suggested just doing a pleat, an extra pleat, or something like that. And so I did that. I put an extra pleat on the sleeve. So instead of having 2 pleats, I have 3 pleats on my sleeve so that I can actually get the cuff on the sleeve. In terms of alterations and adjustments, I lengthened my garment. So the first time I lengthened it, I lengthened the garment during the mock-up phase, and that was by 2 inches. And I found that during that phase that the 2 inches, it basically hit just above my knee. I wanted it to go just a little bit below my knee. And so after for my second and final garment, I actually lengthened the back and front by 4 inches. And so the length of my dress is, I lengthened the dress by 4 inches, and I lengthened it from view A, because view A is the longer version in the tunic. And so I lengthened it from that point by 4 inches. The other modification or adjustment that I made was to the sleeve cuff. So one of the things that I like to do with my sleeve cuffs, especially on a button-up shirt like this, is I like to do the loop and button closure instead of doing like the continuous lap, and also the button holes on the cuff with the buttons, because it's just too fussy for me. I don't like fiddling with my cuffs and trying to get my cuffs on. I just like to slip my hand through my cuffs. So I either make a cuff where I can slip my hand through without having a loop closure or any type of button closure, or I would do the loop and button closure. And in this case, I decided to do the loop and button closure. And again, I'll share with you what that looks like and how I achieved that. I'll put images here so you can see what that looks like. So I did make that adjustment to my cuff as well. And I selected the wider cuff instead of the regular size cuff. So the cuff is, I believe it's maybe about 3 or 4 inches wide, after you put the seam allowance, after you take out for the seam allowance and all of that. I believe it's about 3 to 4 inches wide. And then there's a smaller cuff that I believe is about 2 or 2.5 inches wide. In terms of buttons, the original garment that you make straight from the tissue paper and the from out of the envelope, I think you need about 6 buttons. So 4 for the front. I'm sorry, you need 4 for the front and 4 for your sleeves, because you're using 2 buttons on each sleeve. So that's 8 buttons. So I used 10 buttons. So I used 2 for the sleeves and 8 to go down the center front of my garment. I had the additional 4 buttons because I made mine into a dress. So just to keep that in mind, if you decide to go in and make this pattern into a dress. I also made a self belt to go around the waistline because I wanted my garment to kind of mimic my inspiration photo there. And so for the belt, I used a TNT pattern, which is, I believe, the Butterick B6809 or one of those patterns. And I used that pattern belt out of that to sew my belt for this garment as well. So in terms of like how I decided on this inspiration or to create this dress when I was doing the Soda Trends series, this is one of the dresses that was not in the actual, like the fall collection, but it was one of the dresses that I saw at the time on the Ralph Lauren site. And I thought, wow, it would be so easy to create that. And I already had the Simplicity S9707 on my sewing plans for fall this year because I wanted to make something with that beautiful zebra print, which I think I'm going to choose a different pattern for the zebra print. Not that this is a bad pattern. I just think to get the most out of my fabric, because I have a lot of that fabric, I want to choose a different fabric or a different pattern for that particular fabric. So this dress took about 2.5 yards to make. And in terms of the fabric, I purchased that from Joann. So the way in which the fabric, how it came off the bolt, the lines, the stripes on the garment was horizontal. And so in order for me to get a vertical dress, I had to put the pattern pieces on the not the crosswise grain, sorry, not the straight of the grain, the crosswise grain. So I had to put the fabric on the crosswise grain in order to achieve this look. That was my experience sewing this and creating this lovely Ralph Lauren dress. I hope you had fun watching this video. If you did, please make sure you give it a big thumbs up and let me know what you thought of this make. I can't wait to hear from you all, and I will talk to you all in the next video. Bye.